Hi everybody, welcome back to the Stellium Astrology podcast. I'm Stephanie James and I have already done a few intro episodes. The last episode I did wasn't particularly long, so I thought I might take advantage of that rather small sound bite and give you a little extra episode wedged in. And I wanted to kind of introduce myself because I realised that even though I've done the welcome and everything, I haven't really properly told you my story, why I got into astrology, and really how it changed my life, I suppose. So I thought I'd just give you a little bit of background on me. And I have always been interested in sort of astrology things and tarot, and I've just always been interested in that kind of area of things. And my mum has always told me that my grandfather, her father, was able to hypnotise people. So he somehow, I don't know how he gained his skills, but he understood hypnosis and was able to hypnotise people. She told me loads of funny stories about who he'd hypnotised. It sounded like very theatrical hypnosis, not like the type of hypnotherapy that you can get now, which is very not entertaining at all. It's very relaxed and takes you into your own subconscious and helps you to work on yourself from within. It sounded very entertainment value type hypnosis, but nonetheless I found it fascinating. And also that my grandmother's dad, so my great grandfather, was a palmist, and he was interested in all things palmistry, and I don't know whether he was interested in astrology or not, but he was already interested in that sort of thing. So there was already talk of things like that. I'd always talked about these sorts of things, and also my grandmother had always talked about having a bit of a psychic ability to an extent, which it was something like I think she'd have like those kind of dreams, those precognitive dreams and things like that. And myself as a child growing up, I was always, I don't know, I always felt a little bit different. And I think so let me tell you about my chart. I've got Sun in Capricorn and Moon in Scorpio, and I have a Gemini ascendant. And Sun in Capricorn, generally, they don't come into their own usually until they've had their Saturn return, and then as life goes on, things get a bit easier for them, or they kind of just adapt to understanding. I suppose having a Capricorn sun, your sun in the sign of aging, as a child, it's probably not the best placement, but as you start to get older, you start to slip into that Capricorn mentality. And I also have a stellium in Aquarius. I have all of my personal planets, so Venus, Mercury and Mars and my midheaven are all in Aquarius. And that is a very that has lent to me feeling very different and always kind of feeling a bit of an outsider, I suppose. So growing up, I wasn't like the popular one ever, and I was always interested in astrology and things. And I remember for one of my birthdays, my mum got me some karma cards and lovely little things like that I just used to. And whenever we used to go to the seaside, I remember there was like this little hippie shop. If anybody's from in the UK, I used to go to Worthing a lot. And there was a little arcade in Worthing, and I don't know the name of the shop now, but there was a tiny little shop. It was just like a little tiny little place that sold all sorts of like beads and crystals, and like back in the 1980s, they were like, like mugs with like suns and moons on and things like that. Just all those kind of things that I just kind of, it spoke to me. And I guess, I kind of, being a Capricorn, I kind of realised that, or I thought that I was just going to have to be a sensible girl, responsible and all that. And I wasn't because I had a very rebellious youth. So really, I struggled to fit into the Capricorn idea of who I was supposed to be. Not that I was trying to fit into being a Capricorn, it's just that's the way I'm talking about myself. I knew I was a Capricorn. I thought Capricorn sounded boring in astrology, and I didn't really know much more about astrology than just sun signs. But I remember even being at school and them saying, what do you want to study when you get older? And the only thing that had really captured my imagination was when I was in a science class and they put an astronomy DVD on. Oh my gosh, it wasn't even a DVD, it was a video. So they put a video on in my science class on one of those old TVs. And I remember watching the planets and just being so riveted. I was so fascinated by space. And yeah, so when it came to picking my college courses, I chose to study astronomy. But unfortunately, as I was probably one of the only people that actually chose that course, they decided not to run it. So they were like, what was your plan B? And I was like, I don't really know. I haven't really thought about a plan B. That's all I want to do. So I ended up studying a variety of different courses at college, all sorts of things. And I became like a qualified hairdresser, and, I did all these kind of courses because my Gemini ascendant is a bit of a course junkie. I do enjoy going to courses and the classroom environment. I find that all very interesting. And what I've failed to mention is that my Mercury, when I was born, was retrograde when I was born, it went retrograde on the day that I was born. So people who are born with Mercury retrograde generally tend to struggle to reach where they're supposed to be, or where they think they're supposed to be, as quickly as they want to. And for me, it being my chart ruler, I think I kind of started life a few steps further back than everybody else. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't really sort of resonate with many things, and I kind of went into the world of work not really having much of a focus of what I wanted to achieve. But I didn't really have any problems in the workplace as far as, actually achieve, like doing quite well at my jobs. And, as a Capricorn, was able to get promoted and do quite well in, the places that I worked. But it never really fulfilled me. It really didn't give me a sense of purpose, what I was doing. I worked in the civil service for about 7 years, and that was, it got to the point where I was actually really quite depressed, because I just thought, I just can't see how life can carry on, how I can carry on trying to get up and go to work and doing something that just doesn't fulfill me. And interestingly, around the time that I was having these thoughts and feelings, I was coming closer and closer to my Saturn return. And it is at that point in your life where if you're not doing things that really resonate with you, then you're kind of forced onto a route that makes you follow your bliss, or at least do the things you're supposed to be doing rather than the things you think you're supposed to be doing. And for a Capricorn, a Saturn return can be a quite a profound time in their life, because they are actually, their ruling planet, Saturn, is saying to them, right, okay, enough of this silliness. I know that you think that you're supposed to be doing this, but actually you're supposed to be, you're not supposed to be working here, or you're not supposed to be married to this person, or you're not supposed to be, engaged, or perhaps, you're actually supposed to be going off to another country and doing a little bit of soul searching and self-discovery. It really is a kind of coming of age tale. So my problem was that I was always taking other people's advice. I just kind of wanted to hear what other people said and what they thought was best for me. I don't know if it's a kind of cop out to be like that, because then you can turn around and blame other people for things. But I think it was just a sense of, you just trust. I know for me, I really followed my mum's advice, and I really believed that she knew what was right for me. And then when it came to things, there were a lot of things that I know that now, if I turned back the time now, I would definitely do them differently. And obviously my mum was coming from a place of love, but it was one of those things where what's right for her was definitely not right for me. So basically I did listen to a lot of other people's advice and follow what other people said they thought was right for me. And around, I think it was 2011, I broke up from somebody I was in a relationship for I think I was with them for about 4 or 5 years. And during that breakup, I got into, I think actually was it 2011. During that breakup, I was already I was doing yoga for a number of years anyway, but I really started to get into alternative health. And I started, looking into, different nutritional ways of looking at things, getting into different kind of diets and things like that, because I just felt so wrong. My whole body felt wrong. I was smoking. I drank lots of coffee. I just treated my body like a bit of a dustbin. I didn't treat my body very well at all. And I kind of got to a point, and around this time, interestingly, Pluto entered Capricorn, and so that was about 2008, and that's when I started to really go through these amazing transformations where I started feeling like I have to stop treating my body so badly, and I have to actually start looking after myself. And that begins with me actually taking care of, it's not just the body, it's the mind and the spirit as well. So I got into alternative health and went to see a holistic nutritionist and working out where I needed to change. And it's been an incredible process of transformation that literally started when Pluto entered Capricorn. And Pluto didn't meet my sun in Capricorn until the first time was 2016. So for 8 years, Pluto was in Capricorn doing some of his magic on me before he'd even reached my sun. And so yeah, I started really trying to implement better habits, and I actually booked myself in to see an astrologer. I think I mentioned this when I was talking in one of my earlier episodes, but I booked in and saw a lovely lady called Mary English in Bath, and she's a astrologer and hypnotherapist and homeopath. And she gave me a reading, and I just had my mind was blown. I just couldn't believe how accurate it was. And we were on the telephone as well. You know, when people say about cold reading and stuff, we were over the phone. She couldn't see my face because we weren't Skyping, because back in those days I was scared of Skype. And yeah, she just was saying stuff, just looking at my birth chart, and it's just, how can you be so accurate when there's no way she could have known the things she knew. So it was really, really awesome. And I immediately was hooked. And she was running a course on, like, just a beginner's course, basically. So I signed up and I studied, I think, about 6 classes with her, and bought the Astrology for Dummies book and was really, really immersing myself in that, and started following loads of astrologers on the internet and, really getting into it. But I never ever thought that it would be something I'd end up doing. I just loved it. And it just really, suddenly, for the first time ever, the way she was able to tell me about my life and what was going on with me, and also about what is potentially coming for me in the future, it really made me feel like, for once, there really was some kind of bigger meaning, and that actually I wasn't just floundering around in this empty, vast nothingness, not really achieving much and never really going anywhere. I suddenly just realised, actually, if she's able to tell that stuff, and I just felt there was such a connection. I just really felt there was such a connection. So it just changed the way I felt about life. And that's when I started studying astrology, and I really felt passionate about something. I really just found something that just lit me up from the inside out. So it was just a moment of a kind of a real eureka awakening moment for me with astrology, going for my first ever reading. And then later on that year, I decided to sign up to the London School of Astrology. And, I joined the London School of Astrology at my Saturn return. So that was what was really, really interesting to me, because I didn't realise that when I booked in with the London School of Astrology. It was only when I ended up looking back after, maybe a few months of studying astrology, that I realised that it was actually my Saturn return. And it was almost, I don't know if it was actually to the day. I think it was very close to my Saturn return. And the chart that I had for my first ever class at the London School of Astrology was such an incredible one. It was just so amazing. There were so many different planetary transits that were triggering my chart. So that was where I met Frank Clifford, and also Kim Farley, I think, was doing the first classes with us. And I met loads of other people also really interested in astrology. And I just suddenly was like, wow, this is what I've been waiting for my whole life. I've been looking for something that just feels like me. I felt like I came home. I felt like for the first time ever, I really felt that I was with a bunch of people that just accepted me for who I was, and that I was actually I just arrived, I was just finally in my place with my people. So, and I'm still really good friends with loads of people that I met at the LSA in my first year of learning astrology. And that triggered, I ended up studying Reiki as well, and I'm a third degree, I did 3 degrees of Reiki, so I'm a Reiki master practitioner. And I met some wonderful people doing Reiki as well, who I'm still in touch with. And, my astrology journey just took me to a point, it took me to a place where I just wanted to immerse myself in it. And I remember being in, I think, year 2, and I said to Frank, "Oh, what does it mean when Mercury is going to retrograde over my midheaven?" And he said to me, "Oh, I think it means that if you're interested in, looking at different types of work, then it's a good time to put the feelers out." And so I said to him, "Oh, okay, I'd like to work at the LSA." And he said, "Oh, okay, well, I'll let you know." And he then asked me later down the line if I'd like to help out on some bookstores for him. So I did some voluntary work, a lot of voluntary work at conferences, and I ended up working on a lot of different bookstores at a lot of different conferences, absolutely loving it because it's such a sociable job and it's really good fun, and you just get to have lots of little conversations with people in my very Gemini ascendant way. Lots of little conversations with people, and then you get the people that keep coming back up for more books because they're totally just obsessed with buying astrology books. So you end up having loads of little conversations with like the same people, and they come up with their sort of like head hanging down a little bit because it's like, yeah, I'm back for more books. And I think, yeah, I totally relate. I'm the same. So I love doing the bookstores at the conferences, and then. After studying at the LSA, I think I stayed at the LSA for 4 years in the end. And I think during my 4th year, Frank encouraged me to do a talk at the Lodge in London. Frank is the principal, by the way, if I didn't mention that. But he encouraged me to do a talk at the Astrological Lodge. And I never, ever, ever believed I could ever stand up in front of a room full of people and talk. I just didn't believe I had it in me. I was a very nervous, shy person, actually. I don't know if people necessarily believe that about me, but I honestly am very shy. I'm quite, or I used to be anyway, and I was almost painfully shy to the point that speaking out in front of anybody used to terrify me. And I know a lot of people that say that. They say that public speaking is terrifying. And I really, 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 really felt like that too. But I had made a promise to myself that year, and I'd made a promise to myself that I would say yes to opportunities instead of no. It was a point in my life where I thought, no, I must take life and its opportunities when they present themselves and run towards them head on, because I'm fed up of letting my life pass me by and not doing things because I'm scared of, I'm just scared of failure, I guess. I mean, I'm a Capricorn, and I have a Saturn-Pluto conjunction in my natal chart. So there's a big element of like fear and, doubt and, that kind of thing that really holds you back. And I just really wanted to challenge myself. So I did. And I did the talk at the Lodge, and it was such an amazing experience for me. I just had the most amazing time. And around that time, I don't know if it was before or after that, I also was asked by a number of people if I would teach them astrology. So I started teaching, it must have been after the talk, but I started teaching astrology to a few groups of people. And that was, again, a really interesting experience for me because it really showed me that I was able to do things that I didn't believe that I could. And yeah, that really sort of set me on a little journey, and I realised how much I loved talking to people about astrology and teaching ideas and sharing ideas. So it kind of set the bar for me. And since then I've done a lot of, I've been to a few different astrology groups all over the UK, and I've also travelled to India and spoken at a conference in India a few years back, which again, I travelled to India on my own. It's just something that I never would have done before. I've never really gone anywhere. I'd never really travelled anywhere on my own. So for me to do that, that was an amazing thing for me. And and then also I started, I appeared on a podcast. I was asked to go on my friend's podcast, and then they invited me back to be their resident astrologer, which I was ecstatic about. I just really loved it. I didn't really understand. I used to listen to loads of podcasts. I loved listening to podcasts, and I always said I'd really love to do one, but I never thought, I didn't really know what I would do my podcast about back in the old days before I got really madly into astrology. And I just kind of, I just didn't know. So I just said, yes, I'll be your resident astrologer. And I went on and I did a number of shows for, I did a couple of shows for THA Talks, and then I set up a podcast with the co-presenter of THA Talks, Shana Collins. I think I mentioned this before actually in the welcome episode. And Shana and I had a podcast together called Hijack. It's called the Hijack podcast. What was it? Hey, it's just a conversation. The Hijack Radio podcast. Gosh, my brain. So yes, we had the Hijack Radio podcast together, and it was a transatlantic podcast talking about all sorts of things. So I did that for, I think I did that for a couple of years with Shana as well. So I'm not really a stranger to podcasting. However, this is my first ever solo podcast, and this is not my comfort zone by any stretch of the imagination. This is definitely not my comfort zone, but I am definitely feeling at home doing this sort of thing. This is my vibe. I do enjoy podcasting. And so that's kind of where astrology took me since I got into it. And I really am grateful to Mary English and to Frank Clifford for really pushing me out of my comfort zone. And when I said to Mary, please can you analyse all these different charts for me, I really need to know more, she was like, just learn the course. And for me it was like a bit scary, because learning was something that didn't, as much as I enjoy courses and finding things out, studying it was always a daunting area for me. And so she encouraged me back into the sort of like learning a new subject, and I didn't realise quite how much I'd take to it and how much I'd love it. And Frank also for just pushing me outside of my comfort zone on a number of occasions, and just sort of, and every single time it's been totally welcome, because it's the kind of encouragement that I've always needed, and I got that from him. So I'm so grateful for that. And obviously since I've been doing all this sort of thing, like I said, I've travelled to India, and I've presented in a number of astrology groups, and I've written for a number of magazines, and I've been published in I've got an article in the Book of Music Horoscopes as well, where I wrote about the great hip hop hoax. If you've ever seen it, it's such a great documentary, you should check it out. I absolutely loved that, and I wrote an article on it. And yes, like I said, I've written horoscopes for my website and for Elle magazine, and a number of other places as well. So this was an amazing journey for me. But actually, I think what my journey coincided with was that at my Saturn return, my mum suddenly became very ill. So not only was I doing a job that I was really unhappy with, and I just felt like everything in my life was just so inauthentic and just so I just wasn't living in harmony with myself. But my mum actually got really, really ill very suddenly. And this was around the time that Saturn transited my Pluto. And it was so shocking and scary how quickly it came on. And my mum was very quickly, over a number of weeks, she deteriorated so quickly. She was then taken into hospital, and she continued to deteriorate to the point that we were visiting at all times of the day and night. And we really thought we were going to lose her. And it was around that time that I was forced to do some serious soul searching. And I'd already joined the astrology class with Mary, but at this point I was really starting to wonder, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? And my mum, I was worried about my mum passing away, and not having, still being kind of like a big kid, like not really knowing what I wanted to do with my life, and being like the one that my parents were worried about. And I just couldn't get that out of my head, that I just had no direction. And also I was really introduced to mortality. It really made me realise that life is not permanent, and we only get one shot, and we have to give it our best. And I really woke up to the reality, which is what Saturn does. It really wakes you up to the reality of what's happening in your life. Asks you, is this really what you're happy with? It's a total reality check. So the good news is that my mum did recover, and as a result, I did take matters into my own hands in many ways, and I left my job that I was so unhappy in, and I just got another little job. I leaned back on my hairdressing skills, and I went and worked in a barber salon, and I did a couple of other little jobs where I was, it gave me a lot of free time to think about what I needed to do. So I was very lucky to be able to stay at my parents' while I sorted my life out and figure out where I want to be. And all of this is happening. All of this happened basically around the time that my directed Mercury, like I said, I was born with Mercury retrograde. My progressed Mercury had gone all the way back to the position where it was going to stay station direct and then move forward. So over the first 21 years of my life, Mercury was retrograde, and then it started to go direct again. And actually, I'm coming up for my proper Mercury return by progression next year. So still, as far as my progress chart is concerned, I still have Mercury. I am still retrograde. My whole chart is still retrograde. So I think it's interesting that the closer it gets to its home point, the more I start doing astrology and podcasts and just basically living the life that I feel like I was born to live. So, that's kind of me in a nutshell. I mean, it's quite a big nutshell because that was quite long, I think. But I just wanted everybody to know that this is who I am, this is where I came from, and actually astrology did a lot for me. It's changed my life. I'm a lot happier now, and like I said, I was depressed. I was given medication and told that I would always need to take it. I haven't taken that medication since January 2013, and yes, I've had difficult times since. Yes, maybe I could have benefited from taking an antidepressant, but instead of doing that, I decided to lean on natural ways of managing challenging times. And I also decided, like doing yoga, making sure that I'm eating well and getting good sleep. And, I stopped also in 2013, I went on a total detox and I stopped smoking cigarettes and I stopped drinking coffee and I stopped drinking alcohol. I do drink alcohol now, but I don't drink coffee and I don't smoke anymore. And it was all part of this giant detox that I was going through, this big Pluto detox. And I'm not saying that, everybody should stop taking medication and just do astrology. I'm not, because I know everybody has medication for different reasons and everybody has their own, I'm not a doctor, so don't do what I say as far as that's concerned. I'm just saying that for myself personally, what I like to do is look at the transits and think, okay, I've got some heavy stuff coming up. I know I'm going to have to deal with this and I'll get through it. So, that's just how I manage it. And if it ever did get that bad, then yeah, of course, I would, look at having something to help me out, some medication and that. But it just feels for me that I don't really need it anymore because I'm able to navigate the challenges by looking at what I've got approaching. It just adds context. It just adds so much context to challenging situations that you don't have to necessarily lean on things that, I know with me, antidepressants kind of masked they masked the difficulty that I was feeling, but they didn't really deal with the problem. And at least with astrology, you're able to say, I can see what the conflict is, I can see what the challenge is. It helps you to address the problem and it helps you to sort of heal yourself and manage things in a different way than you would if you went to the doctor and felt like you were leaning on somebody else's professional opinion of what's going on with you. So I feel like I guess it's probably because I'm a bit of a control freak. But anyway, being a Capricorn with a Scorpio moon, is it any kind of surprise that I would say I'm a control freak? I must be. And the other thing is that having a Gemini ascendant, a Capricorn sun and a Scorpio moon, those three things apparently are supposed to be the moodiest. They're the moodiest signs of the zodiac. So moon in Scorpio is known to be quite melancholic. And Capricorn sun also can be quite depressive, and a Gemini ascendant can just have mood swings. Can be like 1 minute they're happy and the next minute they're feeling a bit down in the dumps, and it's just quite up and down. So I'm not surprised that I have had kind of issues with being moody and things like that in the past. When I saw my birth chart and realised that for the first time, I was like, so it's who I am. And as soon as I kind of accepted that about myself. So yeah, there's an element of self-acceptance that comes with learning astrology. And I'm not saying that everybody that joins this journey with me is going to decide, that's it, I'm going to be an astrologer. However, learning astrology, it just helps you to understand yourself and understand what's going on around you a lot better, and it makes you feel like you're able to act in an informed way rather than reacting all the time. So that's what astrology has done for me. It's been an amazing, incredible journey, and it just keeps on giving, and I just keep on growing with it. And it's one of those subjects where you're the eternal student. I will always be learning astrology. It's never ending. And I wanted to set up this podcast to help people along their journey as well. And I know I've said that before. There may be some little things that I repeated myself with here, but actually I just thought it will be useful for you to hear my story. And if you don't really feel like listening to it, you can skip it. But I've put that little detail at the very end of this episode, so there's no good me saying it right there, because if you're at the beginning of the episode, you're not going to know that I said skip it if you can't be bothered. But I'm sure you will anyway. So aside from all of that random waffle, I just wanted to say thank you for listening. And again, if you're enjoying, please subscribe, rate and review. It really helps me out, and actually I'm hoping that I will get bumped up on the new and noteworthy section of iTunes. And if you are enjoying this podcast, if you screenshot it and then tag me at Stellium Astro on Instagram, or you can hashtag it as well, if you wouldn't mind putting the hashtag either Stellium Astrology or the Stellium Astrology podcast, I'd be excited to see that popping up on social media. So yeah, please do let me know if you're enjoying it, and thank you for listening to my story. I know I waffled on a bit there, it was quite a long one, but I guess, Gemini Ascendant has their story to tell. So thanks very much for listening, and I will speak to you next time. Bye.